The Academic Goals and Instructional Improvement Committee will come to order. Roll call.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Beebe?
Present.
Dr. Beebe is present. Dr. Bofi?
Here.
Dr. Bofi is present. Ms. Bradford?
Here.
Ms. Bradford is present. Mr. Garvey?
Here.
Mr. Garvey is present. Mr. Gio?
Present.
Mr. Gio is present. Ms. Harris?
Here.
Ms. Harris is present. Ms. Hill is absent. I'm sorry, not in attendance. Dr. Moranti?
Present.
Dr. Moranti is present. Ms. Orange-Jones?
Present.
Ms. Orange-Jones is present. Mr. Romer is not in attendance. Ms. Smith?
Here.
Ms. Smith is in attendance, and Ms. Heredia is not present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. First item.
Your consent agenda is ready for approval, adding items 5.1, 5.2, 6.2, and 6.3, pulling item 6.1.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I move.
Thank you, Ms. Bofi, and second by Mr. Keogh. Any questions or comments? Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, item carries. Next item.
Your first item is on page 4, item 3.1, consideration of a request from a local education agency for a waiver of policy contained in Bulletin 741, Louisiana Handbook for School Administrators. The department recommendation is to approve.
Do you have a motion? Dr. Moranti. Do you have a second? Ms. Harris. Any questions or comments? Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, item carries. Next item.
Your next item is on page 6, item 3.2, consideration of requests from local education agencies for waivers of policy contained in Bulletin 1706, Regulations for the Implementation of the Children with Exceptionalities Act, submitted by the State Superintendent of Education. The department recommendation is to approve.
Do I have a motion? Thank you, Ms. Smith. Second by Dr. Moranti. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, any objections to the motion? Hearing none, item carries. Next item.
4.1.
Your next item is on page 11, item 4.1, consideration of the authorization of New Orleans Video Access Center, Inc. as a course provider for the Course Choice Program for 2015-2016. The department recommendation is to approve.
Do I have a, thank you, Dr. Bofi. And second? Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any question or comments on the item? Any opposition to the motion? Motion carries. Next item.
Your next item is on page 14, item 4.2, consideration of a report regarding the status of course choice providers. The department recommendation is to receive.
Do you have a motion? Dr. Moranti. Thank you, Ms. Orange-Jones. Second.
Members, this is a report that is required in the statutes. This is the first report of its kind because this is the deadline for the report. It's now been 3.5 years since this law was passed. This updates you on a number of course choice providers, including our community and technical college system or our Regents-approved higher education institutions. They're listed here as Louisiana Public Post-Secondary Colleges. This has been a program that in its conception was meant to allow innovative educators, be they colleges, be they workforce training programs, online services, school systems themselves, to provide non-traditional courses to kids, in particular in the middle and high school grades. It changed in its conception due to court cases, a law that we worked on with the School Board Association and Senator Blade Morris from Jefferson Davis Parish. And we ended up creating a situation where school systems work now directly with kids to direct the funding through the MFP for this program, yielding what was last year 27,000 course choice enrollments. This year, because of the success of that initiative, the legislature chose to increase funding for it now to more than $10 million a year, funding dual enrollment and career and technical education courses. And you have in front of you a brief update as to the status of all of those providers. It's quite a thing when you kind of conceive of something out of nowhere and make it into something that's as prominent as this is. This is the first of its kind program in the country. And while there are certainly a number of providers who at the start are no longer in the game, there are a number of providers who at the start, including our college system, Bard Early College, Associated Builders and Contractors, Mastery Prep, and others that are serving huge numbers as Louisiana-grown indigenous organizations that are serving a large number of Louisiana kids. It's helped in terms of getting kids early credit to college, getting them industry-based credentials, getting them higher ACT scores, getting them courses they might not be able to take in order to qualify for TOPS. So it served a variety of needs, and it's something that I'm proud to have worked with our school systems on. I thank you for your original vision in passing it, and I look forward to more great things from the program. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Dr. Buffy?
I'll just say that it was something that we worked on as a board, and so it's exciting to get to this point and be able to look at how many students have been impacted by the work. So thank you.
Yeah, and on an aside, I thank you for your leadership in this. Any opposition to the motion? Motion carries. Next item.
Your next item is on page 19, item 6.1, consideration of an update report on the Special Education Advisory Panel. The department recommendation is to receive.
Do you have a motion? Thank you, Dr. Bopey. Do you have a second? Dr. Moranti? Any comments or questions from the board? We do have some public comment cards. I'm going to call you three at a time. If you'll please come to the microphones. Remember that we do have a 3-minute limit. April Dunn, Victoria Fliss, Bryn Millet, or Millet. And we'll begin with you, please.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Bryn Miet, and I'm a social worker. I'm a licensed master social worker. I work for Deaf Focus, which is a small community agency, and I'm also serving currently as the vice president for the Deaf Education Alliance. And the reason I wanted to comment today is just I did attend the SEEP meeting. I believe it was July 17th or 19th. I can't remember the date. But previously to being a social worker, I worked for vocational rehab, which is Louisiana Rehab Services for the state. Worked there for 4 years, and in that time, all of my clientele, they were all deaf, blind, or hard of hearing. And what pushed me to join the Deaf Education Alliance is because in that time, I met a lot of clients, adults who were recent graduates. They were transition students exiting from either Louisiana School for the Deaf or public schools within Region 2, so Livingston, and East Baton Rouge, West Baton Rouge. And in that time, I met a lot of students who had a lot of trouble with having a strong foundation in any language, whether it be English or sign language. And so that moved me to want to do something. And in becoming a social worker, I wanted to see policy changes. And the Deaf Education Alliance helped amend the Deaf Child Bill of Rights, which has now become Act 250. That did come up in the SEEP meeting. And in regards to a communication plan specifically, and how in federal law we talk about mentioning and addressing communication needs for children in schools. And now we have a state law that mandates a communication plan. And I would just like to see maybe BESE and the Department of Education work together to see how we can make a good, effective training plan for teachers throughout the state and IEP teams as well, so that these students can have a fair chance. Many of them are very bright and intelligent. They just don't have the language foundation to help them achieve to the equivalent of their hearing peers. So I'm asking you today to please consider maybe adding this particular act to your agenda, to BESE's agenda, just for up to some kind of discussion as to how the policy will change moving forward. And that's why I'm here. So thank you
so much for your comments.
Okay, so what Ms. Millett mentioned. First, I want to introduce myself. My name is Victoria Bliss, and I work as a counselor at Deaf Focus Services. I'm the president of the Deaf Education Alliance. And yes, I'm sorry, did I mention something? Okay. Sorry about that. So we're working along with interpreters right now just to ensure proper communication access in this room. I would like to add to what Ray mentioned a few minutes ago. One of the reasons why we are requesting you guys to add the communication plan to the next agenda is because what happened to me when I saw some of my clients, their experience with the lack of communication involvement happened in the school. I'm going to share one story with you. I met a student who was 9 years old, who had absolutely no language, and was transferred from mainstream school to a different school who had a teacher who did not know what to do with that student because they didn't have any proper equipment, they didn't have a communication plan, they were not aware what to do. So they decided to set up some kind of, at the parish level, some kind of, we realized that the teacher was not aware of any kind of arrangement that could be done, and they didn't have any students in the class, and they didn't have anything for the students. So what we decided to do, we're asking you guys to add this to the agenda so that it could be done in the future.
Thank you so much. Ms. Dunn.
Good afternoon. My name is April Dunn. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I am a member of the Louisiana Disability Council. I was recently voted in as new vice chair. I'm here today to share my concern and frustrating about ongoing lack of stakeholder involvement at SEEP. I was shocked to learn that the State Department of Education has not shared crucial information. Proposed change to monitoring relate to special education. I agree with Superintendent White about needed for statewide attention of special education. Parents of kids with disability self-advocate and the Louisiana Development Disability Council has been requesting for years to have meaningful input into policy regarding to special education. 4 years ago, there were about a dozen working groups to discuss special education policy, practice, monitoring, autism, PBIS, ARP, just to name a few. Today we have one, SEEP. Not only is this one group in quality to stakeholder input, but now SEEP members are beginning to realize that SEEP does not allow parental voices. It's been said repeatedly today that dialogues with all stakeholders at the table is important. The realize is that SEEP does not even do this. SEEP mostly receive reports and all the work is done behind closed doors. This has to be stopped.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn, for your comments. The next four people, please come down. Mary Smith, Scott Richard, Rana Otalia, and Houston Moss. We'll begin with you, Ms. Taylor.
Hi, my name is Rana Otala. I'm a parent of a deaf child with bilateral cochlear implants.
Would you check and be sure your mic is on?
Yes. I'm also a SEED member for the last 2 years. We're here to discuss what happened at last SEED meeting. We had worked with the Department of Education over the legislative session to put together Act 250, which is the Louisiana Deaf Bill of Rights. And we felt that we got to an understanding that we're all on the same page. But when the department came up with the implementation of Act 250, we were very surprised that it did not include a communication plan as stated in the state bill. State bill clearly states that a communication plan has to be part of every deaf, hard of hearing, deaf-blind student. During our discussion with the Department of Education staff, we handed them on more than one occasion a paper copy of what communication plan is. Communication plan is encouraged by the federal law, and we feel it's crucial for IEP teams to understand the needs of deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind students. If you can look at this page, this is what the department put out, and there is nothing in this page that refers in any way to deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind students. They talk about objectively measuring the child language. Who's going to do that, and what tools do they have? It talks about carrying communication mode. There is no list of communication modes on this guidance. Nothing about sign language, nothing about cue, nothing about pidgin, nothing about different modes that deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind students use. And this is a bill about deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind. So we feel that the implementation that the department put out does not meet the needs of our students. It's stuck. There is a feeling that there is no change in policy after Act 250, and that this is just repeating what federal law is stating. We feel that there is a change because it talks about school district responsibility on educating our population, talks about teacher qualification, talks about interpreter qualification. It talks about students that start school and leave with no communication mode whatsoever. So we're very concerned that the department is not working with us effectively to implement this bill. And we're asking the BESE members to consider adding communication plan. I have also included 2 copies of communication plan, one from New Hampshire and one from Colorado. And the Colorado one clearly refers to the federal law in it. And we feel this can help many students get the services they need if IEP team members who are not informed about deaf education know what the needs are. So we're asking for 2 things. One thing is if you can add Act 250 to the next BESE agenda so that we can get a closer look about what needs to be changed and what policy changes need to be added. And because the department does not have anybody right now who is informed about deaf education, we feel that a task force needs to be formed to come together from stakeholders that understand deaf education reform to figure out how to move forward with implementing this bill.
Thank you, Ms. Attell.
Can I ask a question?
Shirley, Superintendent?
Rana, why do you think we typically work very well together, and we did on the legislation. Why do you think it's gotten to the point where you're, saying that there has been a lack of dialogue?
Okay, the communication plan, you can look at it. It clearly
No, I understand the communications plan is inadequate. I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm just wondering, how do you think we got to the point where there's an inadequate communications plan? Because you obviously know what you're talking about, and we take your guidance very often.
Exactly.
So how do you think we got to that point?
It's just that the department no longer wanted to hear our perspective. We are parents, we are speech therapists, teachers of the deaf, we are audiologists, interpreters. We came together because there is a need. And we got to the point that the department this has nothing to do with deaf-blind kids.
Did you all meet before the seat
we
meeting?
We had a couple of discussions, but we got to the point that this is it. But we feel that we had a voice. We have a new act that needs to make a change from before Act 250 and after 250.
And is the issue that you find the guidance inadequate, or is the issue, and I don't know the answer, but is the issue that you find the guidance inadequate, or is it that you want it to be a mandate and the department doesn't want it to be a mandate?
It doesn't have to be a mandate. If it's a document included in SIR saying that whoever wants to use it can use it, I think that's sufficient enough for us.
Yeah.
Because most people who don't know anything about deaf education would love to have some kind of guidance to go through to help them get it.
You just want a better document.
We talked to them about creating our own. Actually, we had one that we worked with LSU Health and Science Center, Communication Department Disorder, that they helped us adjust it to make it work for every child who has a communication disorder. But we cannot just exclude deaf hard of hearing from the big language because we want it to be universal.
Yeah.
This act is about specific population. We can add more to it to include nonverbal kids, kids with apraxia, kids with autism, but the main focus of this bill is deaf hard of hearing, deaf blind kids. So we can't just have it too general.
Why don't we do this? I want to hear the rest of the commenters, but I wanted to share with the board. My sense is we should just have an additional discussion, and I will lead that discussion. I commit to you that, and we can make a decision in the interim whether we need to bring it back to the board to have a discussion. I'm happy to work with any one of you to have a dialogue, and we can come meet in my office and have that discussion. It seems like we should, before we decide whether to put it on the agenda, we should have another discussion between me and whoever else is appropriate. So I commit that to you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Moss?
Madam Chair, if we're going to have interpreters speaking again, I'd like for the staff to advise them on which microphone they can use so that the audience can hear the interpreters speaking.
Thank you. Mr. Moss?
So my name is Houston Moss. I am the president of the Louisiana Association for the Deaf. We provide services for people in need, people who are deaf, blind, deaf, and hard of hearing throughout the state of Louisiana. And we have been doing that since 1989. When I read the document, I believe you all have a copy of it. But we've noticed a problem. Again, it's a communication issue. The biggest problem that we're having is between the teachers and the students. And honestly, we have many interpreters who are not qualified. In the public school system, we have a lot of students who suffer loss of opportunities because they don't have qualified interpreters in the classroom. And those interpreters don't provide proper access to instruction due to their limited skills. Now, throughout the state of Louisiana, we do have a certification system. We have about 57 sign language interpreters who are certified nationally. And we have about 2,000 deaf students, and over 2,000 deaf students in the state of Louisiana. So there is only 57 certified interpreters. And half of them work in the community. That means that they're not working in the educational system. So half of that, to meet the needs of 2,000 students, it's a staggering number. And we feel that the children are behind in their language, their communication, their vocabulary, because they don't have sufficiently qualified interpreter. Just a moment, excuse me, to ask for clarification. Thank you. And the students have the right, what we call free public education opportunities, and that applies to also deaf, blind, and hard students who also need to get the very same opportunities as the other students can have. And so there needs to be more monitoring and training of interpreters as well as teachers who can provide better communication for our students. Thank you so much for your attention. And I have a letter here that can perhaps be passed to the board members.
Thank you very much. Mr. Richard.
Good afternoon, Ms. Bradford and members of the board. Scott Richard, Louisiana School Boards Association. As we hear the dialogue today in regards to the new act, my comments are more specifically focused on the minutes of the seat meeting. Obviously, these are very complicated matters, and there's never enough resources to effectively implement many of the requirements, many of the needs of our students across the state with exceptionalities. We're pleased to see that compliance monitoring will start again in some form or fashion. And at the end of the day, it takes all of us working together. It takes school boards, superintendents, all stakeholders, the State Department of Education, to support the needs of our students in Louisiana. And just wanted to come to the table today and say that we stand ready to be a part of the solutions, and would welcome more level of expertise from the department's level to meet the needs of the students that have the most serious exceptionalities, where there are barriers that exist to learning. And I can't reiterate the need of everybody working together collaboratively to make sure the proper services are provided. And if there's a lack of expertise in our state in regards to interpreters in the school systems, I don't think there's a superintendent or a school board around the state that would not be interested in working more closely with the department and other stakeholders to increase the pool of certified service providers. And these are very serious issues, and as the school year is about to start, it's important that we note the effort is there to work together, just as it's always been. And it's important that we would like to see the level of expertise at the department, and this is not a criticism, it's an observation, that at one time there was a level of expertise in the department to help school districts with training and making sure properly certified folks were and services were being provided. And again, I reiterate the notation that some type of monitoring will occur. And if districts are not following the scope of the law, and not just in regards to the new act on the books, but monitoring should be something that works to correct problems in a positive way and not a negative way. And we're happy to see that monitoring is being discussed and should move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richard. Ms. Smith? Yeah, pull her mic a little closer. Thank you.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes,
Good.
thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Smith. I'm hard of hearing. I don't know where to start, but I will tell you a little bit about my background, and then I'll go into why I support the communication plan. I entered Florida High School, which is a little rural school up in mid-east of Louisiana, so you know where it's at. And I was there for 8 years, and then I went to Louisiana School for the Deaf. Thank God for the Louisiana School for the Deaf. That's where I found myself. And I went to Gallaudet. I got my master's plus 30. But I'm right here today. I sent you all a letter. I hope you got it, but I would like for you to look at the link that I provided entitled Warehouse. I'm really concerned because I think that is what is happening in Louisiana. And I'd like for you to try and avoid that kind of situation by adopting a communication plan. I envision a communication plan as a way of helping the parents and educators as the kid goes through the school system. A communication plan can show us where the kid is, how they are learning, what they are profiting from. Many times when I was at the Louisiana School for Deaf, I call myself catching up. We get the kids when they haven't started to learn signs, and then we have to play catch up and get them to encourage them to learn as much as they can in the short span they are with us at LSD. I support parents' rights to the variety of modes of communication. But honestly, if one mode is not working in 2 years, I think the IEP team needs to look at it and say, okay, we tried that, it's not working, let's try something else. I think I heard Mr. Romer said something about meeting with these people. I would like that very much because I think it's time to get together and improve our service for the deaf children, deaf, blind, and hard of hearing kids in the state of Louisiana. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. That concludes our public comments. This motion is to receive the SEEP minutes report. Any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next item.
Your next item is on page 29, item 6.4, consideration of revisions to meeting dates and membership of the Standards Review Committees. The department recommendation is to approve.
Thank you, Dr. Bofi. Do I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any comments or questions? Ms. Harris?
I have a comment and then a concern. My comment is I'm just thankful for the meeting revision, and I think it's great that we can include as many people as possible, and I think we have done that, but I think this is great, and I appreciate that. My concern is from some members in my district. They have expressed a concern about how the members of the Standards Committee are replaced when someone leaves. And it may only happen once, it could happen 10 times, but if it happens a lot, then maybe it could upset the balance of philosophy on the Standards Committee. So I'm just wondering, is there anything that can be done to ensure that the committee stays balanced philosophically as members leave? And I don't think this is something that can be decided today, but it's just I wanted to raise the concern from my constituents.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Superintendent?
Thank you for raising the issue. On one level, the law doesn't talk about the ideological balance, and I want to be clear about that. The law makes very specific designations for what categories of people. And look, I've gotten calls from people who are concerned about business. They think lobby has too much influence, or the unions. They think they've got too much influence. But the law establishes those categories. That's how those appointments are made. So you never voted on an ideological or philosophical or political leaning from anybody, and I think the law sets that explanation or that up intentionally. What you voted on were the people who the legally established nominators gave you. And so in this case, we turned to the legally established entity, and that was the Monroe City Parish School Board. Excuse me, the Monroe City School Board. That was the entity that had nominated this person. We simply said, give us someone who replicates essentially the background of that person. So what did they nominated an 18-year educator who was among the nominees for State Teacher of the Year in math and has a wide background in professional development for her school system. I don't think anyone has any sense of her ideological, philosophical leanings. That's not part of our screening process. But I do want to be clear with you and everybody, Ms. Harris, that what the law sets up is a very specific formula for how these people are to be nominated, and you don't have a lot of discretion in that matter, nor does the department.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
Thank you, and thank you, Superintendent. I just want to follow up just a little bit because I appreciate the explanation on the law and how the stakeholders are. That's not something that we came in and decided on. So those stakeholders that are already on the review panel basically are because we're following the law.
That's right. In other words, the regulations and the laws combine to spell out a pretty clear listing of nominators and categories of people, representatives of industry, representatives of higher education, and on down the line. Those entities then give you a couple of those people, and that's your choice. It is fair to say that there was a point in the process where BESE said, we want the right to nominate 9 people.
Right.
And that was explicitly to guarantee some people you might say are more skeptical of the current standards, that there would be people with that perspective on the panel. As I've said, my gut sense is most people are not really for the standards. They're not really against them. They like some of them. They don't like others. But one way or the other, other than those 9 people, you've given yourself no discretion. This is all about someone else choosing people to nominate.
Well, thank you. And I know this is probably not the right place, but I just do want to make a statement that I'm extremely impressed that we've already had the 30,000 comments. I know that you'll address that at the appropriate time, either tomorrow or whenever. But I think people have to be engaged and really want to be engaged to go online to the portal and do that. And so I'm encouraged by the number of comments. And I just want to remind anybody that may be listening or here in the audience today that they can continue to comment, and even if they find it cumbersome or difficult, they still have an opportunity in an open-ended way to make a comment about the standards. And I think that is extremely important because all of us maybe don't understand all the acronyms or maybe all of the educational terminology, but we may have a thought about the process, and I think our mission statement really is to have this review process as open and pure as possible, and I'm extremely encouraged with the beginning step of 30,000 comments. So I just want to say thank you for that explanation, because sometimes we forget how all the law determines who's on these committees. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Madam Chairman?
Mr. Garvey?
Yes, I'd like to highlight the part of what the superintendent said about how we added 9 slots in order to make sure that the parties that were skeptical of the process felt a little bit better and felt that they did have a balanced committee that was looking at this. And along those lines, I was very interested in making sure that that happened. So if you do hear anything that makes you think it is getting unbalanced, please let me know, and I'll work with you to do what we can within the law to make sure that it is balanced.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Dr. Beebe, did you have a comment?
I want to ask Superintendent White, was any consideration given to Saturday dates? When we first discussed, I said that it doesn't lend to teachers who are in the classroom to attend those meetings, particularly in the congressional districts, the meetings that
We haven't yet done that, and here's why. I felt like it would be a little bit cumbersome for, at this stage, us to go back out to everybody and reschedule. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to suggest to the committee chairs that they themselves kind of feel out the possibility of timing and how it's working for their committee members, and if it's feasible to make adjustments, we can make adjustments. If not, then not. But I think at this late date, I felt like sending an all-call, would you be open to Saturdays, would just throw all these 101 people into a panic. If the committee chairs kind of have the discussion with the committee, though, I'd feel better about it. And if you're okay with it, Dr. Beebe, I'd like to ask that they manage that process.
That's good.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Ms. Smith?
Will the August 19th meeting will that be like a regular open meeting where people may make their comments if they, for some reason, missed the engaging on the portal?
Yes. And by the way, what's the email address people can email? LouisianaStandards@la.gov. If you just email LouisianaStandards@la.gov, anybody can have their comments heard. Those comments are posted online also, by the way. They didn't come through the portal. They just came through LouisianaStandards@la.gov, and we posted those online. Also, you can come, Ms. Smith, to the public meetings. And while it's not a source of public comment, if you don't want to comment but want to watch the meeting, you can also just visit the live stream. Every meeting will be televised on a live stream, which is at our live stream account, livestream.com/LDOE.com.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman?
Mr. Garvey?
Yes, along these lines, a related issue is the park testing, and I had a question for the superintendent. Correct me if I'm wrong or correct my observation. I was reading something the other day that said that Louisiana was no longer in the park consortium. Can you tell me if that's true?
That is, yes.
So we are no longer in the park consortium. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next item.
Your next item is on page 30, item 7.1, consideration of revisions to Bulletin 139, Louisiana Child Care and Development Fund programs regarding improvements to the Child Care Assistance Program. The department recommendation is to approve as notice of intent.
Do I have a motion? Thank you, Dr. Moranti. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Garvey. Any questions or comments?
Members, this is a complicated but I think very positive agenda item, and I want to just explain it to you policy-wise for a brief second. The goal of Act 3 of 2012, as you know, was to create a network in every parish where families with young children could participate and send their kids to a highly qualified and accessible early childhood program. To that extent, you've passed early childhood standards, you've required more of teachers, you've started measuring, you've created a quality rating system, you've done so much to upgrade the possibilities for early childhood education. But we need to face realities, which is that child care in particular, which as you know is aid to families who are working and who have children birth to 5 interested in having care for those kids while their parents are at work. That has been decimated in the state budget over the last 5 to 10 years. In fact, child care rosters in our state have gone from 40,000 to 15,000, and these are our poorest people. So you have to look at why that is, and in great part it's because we have cut the amount of money that as a state we give to child care recipients. Child care recipients today earn an average of $1,700, which is ostensibly supposed to pay for a full year's worth of all-day child care. Well, as you can imagine, that's just not that good a deal, and most parents don't take us up on it. As a result, we've been leaving $10 million a year on the table in Washington in federal money, just sitting on a table, earning interest for the federal government, and not getting child care children taken care of, not getting parents to work, and not paying our teachers well. As a result, we've got too many kids sitting at home, too many families not working, and teachers in our child care is making minimum wage. And when I say that, I mean it quite literally. You could have a master's degree teacher in a pre-K and a teacher without a high school degree making just minimum wage in a child care center in our state. I know we would all believe that's unacceptable. One important dimension of that is using that $10 million we leave on the table to up the amount of money that we give to low-income families who are working so they can find an affordable child care for their young child. Today, we're proposing that you increase from $17,000 to roughly $4,000 per year the annual stipend that is given to child care recipients. This would not cost the state additional money. It would instead draw down the $10 million annually that we leave on the table in Washington, D.C. to actually put it to work for Louisiana families. Finally, it wouldn't just be the families that benefit. It would be the centers and the teachers who would now actually be able to earn a living wage rather than a minimum wage, which will be more than necessary when the requirement kicks in 2019 that they have an associate's degree to perform in those classrooms. I think this is a common sense proposal. It's not one that costs the state any money. It's one that goes directly into the benefit and pockets of Louisiana's families who are just there to help their kids and helps our teachers to boot. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Garvey.
Yes, I had a couple of groups approach me with a concern that the elections that are coming up might reshuffle the board and in the process lose track of some of the issues that have been addressed by the committee. And this goes back to item 6.3, which was on the consent agenda, so I was asked to bring it up here. Under 6.3, the committee had its minutes listed, and on item 4, they asked that the Louisiana Department of Education provide a report on the implementation of these proposals. And in, July of 2016, and in August of 16, to reconsider the reducing the training and employment activity eligibility requirement, look also at increasing the infant toddler daily rate, and look again at transitioning to a 12-month flat payment rate. I'd like to amend the current motion to ask the department to bring that report to the committee in July and bring back to BESE a reconsideration of these issues.
I'm not sure that we can, you can make a second motion, but I don't think you can amend the C minutes motion. So let's get this one out of the way and then you can make the second motion. Are you amenable to that?
Sure.
Okay. Any other BESE comments or questions? We do. Mm-hmm. All right, we have 3 speakers, Cindy Bishop, Earl Willis, and Azida Carr. Will you please come to the table? And we'll let you go ahead and begin, please, Mr. Carr.
Hello, how y'all doing? Thank you, Ms. Bradford, Superintendent White, and the board members. I appreciate everything that y'all have done, and thank you so much for increasing the CCAP funding. That was very crucial and very important. I represent Children's College in Slidell, Louisiana, and we are a 4-star facility, early childhood education. And one of the biggest things that we had problems with was dealing with, we've been applying for the last few years, dealing with LA4 and NSECD funding, and just had a couple of quick questions. How are the child care programs selected to receive state vouchers for early childhood education? What is the approval process and timeline? And can we get help in the application stage to submit the best possible solution? Reason I say that, for the past 3 years, we've applied for the NSECD funding and the LA4 program and have not received it. Very little information is provided as to selection criteria, and we are rarely notified of the results. Generally, we have to keep calling the department, and after a week or so of missed calls, we're told our application was denied. It appears that schools with better connections get fundings, and others are left out. How would we go about getting more transparency how schools are selected for the NSECD and LA4 program funding?
Mr. I hate to interrupt you, and I'll let you finish that thought, but that's really not germane to what we're discussing on this particular item. However, the superintendent was going to make comment to you. Recording.
I think my colleague Derek Little will find you after this, and you all can connect. I actually don't share that concern. I'm not saying well, we need to rectify your situation. Right. I actually do believe that the department is communicating with NSCCD applicants responsively, but I want to make sure that you get your answer solved, so I'm going to have Derek grab you as soon as you're done with your comments.
Derek, would you just raise your hand? Okay.
Well, thank you so much for all that you've done, and I appreciate you being an advocate for early childhood education. That speech was very passionate, and thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, and I appreciate it. Ms. Bishop. All right, Mr. Willis.
Yes, ma'am. I'm here on behalf of the Child Care Association of Louisiana, and I'm speaking on Mr. Alan Young, our legislative chair. The Child Care Association of Louisiana appreciates the efforts of John White and the Department of Education and their bold steps to stabilize the Child Care Assistance Program payments. This appropriate allocation of CCAP funding will allow our early learning education facilities to improve the educational standards and teacher compensation. We believe that this first step in normalizing CCAP tuition will ensure our most at-risk children will receive the highest quality early childhood education.
Thank you.
My name is Cindy Bishop, and I'm the Executive Director of the Child Care Association of Louisiana. I just want to say thank you, John White, for your leadership on this. Less than 6 months ago, we sat in a room with John, and he said, I think I've identified $10 million in savings at the federal level, and here we are talking about how to put those into play for Louisiana. So thank you. So the increase in CCAP rates will definitely enable families to choose high-quality child care centers in the state of Louisiana. What we often see is that single parents come into a child care center and they're so excited about the prospect of taking their child to a quality child care center, and then they learn about the co-payment and they can't afford it, and the only option they're faced with is putting their child in an unlicensed, unregulated home. So thank you for your work today on this.
Thank you, Ms. Bishop. Any other comments from board members?
Yes. Oh, no, I mean,
Dr. Buffy?
Are we finished with public comment?
We're finished with public comment.
Well, I just want to know if there are any other federal dollars that we're leaving on the table.
None that I know of.
If you find some, I expect you to let us.
We'll raise a flag.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Bronfman?
Thank y'all so much. I Millie Bronfman with the Policy Institute for Children, and I just can't imagine this day happening and not thanking y'all for this incredible new set of policies that you're considering today. I would like to applaud and thank the superintendent, his entire early childhood team, especially Jenna Conway, who's having a baby, who has a new little baby appropriately, as well as Derek Little and the entire team for their work for over a year on these policies to bring us to where we are today. It will have a huge impact, truly turning the state 180 degrees on allowing at-risk children to access high-quality care. I do need to take a moment, though, and just reiterate the reality that, and this is beyond all, but as we face new leadership in our state, that these policies are truly making it possible for the current children served to be able to access high-quality care. But what it doesn't address is the huge number of children who are not served and have been, and in fact, how we've gone backwards by the kinds of 60% of child care systems over 6 years, and that we have 70% of our children birth through age 5 have all available parents in the workforce, but less than 15% of those folks can access public funding to access high-quality care. And so this is a huge step forward for those children who are being served, but that we need to keep in mind as we go forward to advocate. I hope you'll join me, I know I will be, to increase the pot so that we can serve more children, and they won't end up in unlicensed, unregulated care. But today is the time of celebration, and I thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Bronfman. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none. Any opposition to the motion? Motion carries. Next item.
Nope.
Did you have your arm up? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there
That's
another
okay.
person? Is someone want to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we direct the department to produce a report to the council, CCAP council regarding the an update on the implementation of these new policies, and that we put on the BESE agenda that we revisit the 3 items that I mentioned at our August meeting in 2016. This is item number 4 on page 28.
And it's early childhood.
Early childhood.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Dr. Moranti. Do I have any comments or questions? Any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next item. I think we're going to wait, if you don't mind, Melanie, because we've already voted. So if you don't mind, we'll wait till later for that. Next item.
Your next item is on page 42, item 7.2, consideration of revisions to Bulletin 741, Louisiana Handbook for School Administrators, to align BESE policies with legislation from the 2015 regular legislative session. A revised copy of the additional section has been distributed. The department recommendation is to approve as notice of intent.
So move.
Thank you, Dr. Bofi. Seconded by Dr. Moranti. Questions or comments? Hearing none. Any opposition to the motion? Motion carries. Next item.
Your next item is on page 45, item 7.3, consideration of revisions to Bulletin 111, the Louisiana School District and State Accountability System related to middle school assessment requirements. The department recommendation is to approve as notice of intent.
So move.
Thank you, Dr. Bofi. Second. Dr. Moranti.
Members, just a quick explanation here. One thing you're going to be seeing from us over the course of the next year is a real attempt at streamlining local and state assessments. We have, in many cases, too much time being dedicated to testing, but I think probably just as important as that, sometimes the testing moves kids in a million different directions. It confuses teachers. We've got a lot of old tests that we've come to rely on in our school systems, and we've got to streamline things, and this is part of that. Today you might have a kid who is in 8th grade. She's taking the Algebra 1 end of course test because she's taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade, which is great, but she's also taking the 8th grade LEAP math test. Well, that makes no sense. The Algebra 1 content is the content she's learned that year, and we should allow her just to streamline it, take that one test. The middle school gets credit. the high school gets credit, and we move on. And as it happens, 8th graders who take the Algebra 1 tend to do better than 9th graders who take the Algebra 1 because they're the kids who can take it in 8th grade. So nobody gets hurt, the kid gets less testing, and the student is able to spend more time learning and less time measuring. Thank you so much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any other questions or comments? Any opposition to the motion? Motion carries. Next item.
This concludes your agenda.
It's a choice.
We are adjourned.